welcome to the Arcade Era Power Hour, Episode 8. We're actually keeping track of these things now. Today, we're going to be talking
Who are you?
about... Oh, God, who am I? I'm Gibbon. I sometimes do things. Why am I never prepared for this part of the podcast?
Of dkgirder.com.
Of dkgirder.com. Yeah, exactly.
And I am Milo. Hello.
Yes, my right-hand man. Anyway,
Okay.
welcome to Episode 8. Today we will be talking about SkySkipper, the lost, quote-unquote, arcade game of Nintendo's golden arcade era of the early 80s.
Lost and found.
Lost and found. There's a lot of storied history there. A lot of... There's probably enough to make some sort of King of Kong type documentary, honestly.
Ooh.
I'd love to see
Wonder
that
if-
sort of thing.
Yeah, I wonder if the Restoration Project guys are working on something like that.
Ooh, that's a good question. But first, we do have some news and follow-up.
Quite a bit of news, yeah. I'll take the first one to start with. Last episode, we talked about Slam Dunk Kong, and one of the memorable parts of that game was, well, the elements that were ripped off from other properties. So the boss of the city level was a gorilla who was dressed like Terry Bogard and had some of his special moves. And not long after we did that episode, Terry Bogard came back into mainstream prominence because he was announced as a DLC character for Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah, that was kind of apropos. And led to a lot of fan art of Diddy and Terry comparing hats.
I saw a good one of Ness and Terry bonding over shared interests.
Nice.
Having characters meet like this from different contexts is always a fun time,
Yeah.
especially for fan artists. Yeah, making connections like that.
Cameron, one of our community friends, I think it was Cameron, was pointing out that due to Smash Ultimate, there's now like 80 plus characters that we can now say have canonically fought Dracula.
Starting with Van Helsing and yeah.
No, 80 plus characters just from Smash
Yeah.
that we can now say have canonically fought Dracula. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Fun times. Let's see. Next up would be that in the latest round of Arcade Archives releases on the Nintendo Switch, Versus Pinball made the brackets. Notable as one of the first appearances of Mario and Pauline outside of a Donkey Kong game.
They appear in the bonus rooms where you flip the pinball into a certain hole and then you come out in a screen that's more like a breakout style thing where Mario's holding a girder above his head and Pauline is above him, and you break some blocks so that she falls down, I think is how it works.
Yeah, and it's all original sprites. They didn't just port the sprites over from Donkey Kong. So, yeah.
Has Arcade Archives had many Versus system releases before?
They've had a decent number. They've had Golf is on the upcoming docket, which makes me hopeful for Ladies Golf. But they've also had like Versus Ice Climber and Versus Castlevania and a couple other Versus system games.
Okay, cool. Because the Versus system is sort of the opposite of the way it worked with Donkey Kong itself, which started as an arcade and was ported to the NES. The Versus system is sort of based on NES hardware, and they took NES games and made expanded releases of them for arcades, right?
Yeah, but it also went the other way. There were also a number of games that were made for the Versus system, like Wrecking Crew, which was then ported to the NES, because the original impetus behind Wrecking Crew was sort of the poster boy of the Versus paradigm, in that the two screens on either side of the machine were opposite sides of the stage, so you could see the other player in the background moving around One
Yeah,
is
back
Mario,
to
and one
back.
is Luigi, which is why in the NES port you have Form and Spike replacing the second player's Luigi as the character moving around in the background trying to futz with Mario.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So, yeah.
And something that could only work on a dual screen system like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nintendo has a long and storied history with dual screen systems.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Next news item would be from Tetris 99, the Battle Royale Tetris game, which is the game exclusive to Switch.
It was. I believe they announced it's coming out on something else. Either that or they're just straight up coming up with basically Tetris 99, but with a different name on different systems.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure this theme will be exclusive to the Nintendo version because it's going to have a skin based on Donkey Kong Arcade.
Yeah, it's Tetris 99 is Switch exclusive, and then there's like another Tetris Battle Royale game coming out on other things. But yeah, Tetris 99 has a ton of skins and themes based on various Nintendo properties. Like the last monthly tournament one was a Kirby themed one,
and there was Splatoon before that,
and there was Splatoon earlier, and there's been a couple others. But yeah, they did a Donkey Kong one, and it wasn't tied to a tournament. It's part of their skins shop that you can buy with in-game points.
Oh, okay.
So if you go get some tickets from completing some daily challenges, you can go pick that up from the themes shop. And it's not just skin on everything. It changes the graphical effects up a little bit and changes sound effects and things.
Oh, nice.
So like on the Splatoon one, it changes to like woomies and noises from Splatoon. And all the blocks are sort of in the style of Splatoon, in addition to having the match music going and like the Splatoon graffiti on the background. So for the Donkey Kong one, it's based on the arcade game, and you've got sort of a sprawl of arcade graphic stuff going on in the background, but all the blocks they're not girders, but they're in sort of a 80s arcade style, if that makes any sense. And it's got the music, the do 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 music going, and a hectic mix of the hammer music for the 10 challengers remaining portion of the matches, and just sort of the do 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 noises for when you get line clears and stuff.
Cool.
It's pretty fun. I'm bad at Tetris. Yeah.
This isn't actually the first DK connection in Tetris.
It is not.
Not to mention the fact that he appears playing a drum on the windscreen of the Tengen NES. Was it Tengen? No, Bulletproof. The official one. But also in Tetris DS, which had cameo appearances from a ton of Nintendo characters, mostly in 8-bit style. Yeah. There was a whole game mode that was DK arcade themed.
Yes.
What was it called? Push or pull?
Push makes more sense considering it was a head-to-head sort of thing where you wanted to push it up.
Yeah, I didn't look this up, but much like the Versus system, it's a 2-player head-to-head thing.
They had lots of interesting game modes that sort of tried to evoke the different characters they were using. There was like the quest mode with Link, where it's like clear a line using this thing or make this structure with the blocks sort of thing. And then there was the Metroid one, which was just sort of a free-floating ball. You rotated the thing the blocks were falling onto and had to maneuver it into position to get the blocks to fall into an opportune place.
Yeah, it was really creative with the Tetris mechanics that game was,
And then, the Donkey Kong one was sort of a head-to-head. They did some interesting stuff with that.
You could play that solo as well, I think.
Yes, you could, which is the only way I played it because I didn't have friends.
Yeah, totally.
No, that's not
Alright.
true. This was during college. I actually played that against people. Never mind.
Oh,
But yes, you
well,
can
I'm
play
jealous.
it. You can play it solo.
And speaking of games that you can play solo for now,
Yes.
Mario Kart Tour is out now properly.
Yes, it is.
And they haven't patched in the multiplayer mode yet.
They have not patched in the multiplayer mode yet. They put out a press statement saying it was coming with the first major update. I wonder if it's going to come with the Tokyo Tour that they said was coming
Possibly,
in like a
yeah.
week or two.
Actually, Tokyo Tour starts today, as far as I'm concerned, or tomorrow, I think, for
okay.
your local time. Yeah.
Okay. That shows you how much I'm paying attention.
Yeah, the New York tour ran for, I think, 2 weeks or
Yeah.
4 weeks,
And that
whatever.
is a little bit of our news. It was before the game came out, which was when our last podcast was, we erroneously believed that the new track was a new Donk City track because, come on, look at it. It is instead explicitly a New York track called the New York Minute. And while I was trying to sort of hand wave it and go, nah, it's just a name. It's a new Donk track. You do pass the Statue of Liberty at one point.
And
so
there's-
I'm
there's
just going
other
to be
landmarks.
hard-headed and ignore evidence at this point. But
Well,
more,
doesn't the Mario world have a big statue of Peach that's dressed like the Statue of Liberty? I don't know.
That's a good question. More importantly, though, right before release, like in the week leading up to the release, they announced the, I believe they're calling them Nostalgia Racers, and they said there was going to be a new one for the Tokyo Tour. So I'm kind of wondering who it's going to be. But anyway, the Nostalgia Racer for the New York Tour is Pauline.
Oh,
She's
yeah, that is
in
news.
Mario Kart.
That's been...
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's the dream. But that's been, like, a fact of my life for a while now. I forgot that wasn't... We didn't know that in the last episode. So, yeah.
No, we didn't know that
this
at
is
all.
big news for this.
They in retrospect, they slipped up and talked about it a little bit, but nobody
They did
actually
spoil it
knew
in-
they were talking about it. Because there was one little like news blurb statement that was talking about Mario and Pauline, but then like nobody ever talked about that again. And it's sort of a looking back at it. Oh my god, they totally spoiled it and said something early, but like nobody caught on to the game. And they were all collectively going, oh, okay, phew. They didn't grab that and run with it. But yeah. Yeah, it's fun. She's got the taxi as her signature car that we were previously attributing to I believe they're calling it the musician suit Mario.
Yeah, and I think last time you said that Mario would sort of wear that on that track, but actually Musician Suit Mario was a separate character.
That's what we were led to believe.
I agree.
The way they phrased that press statement was that there were going to be costumes for characters that were track specific that would go with the signature tour track.
Yeah. But I think the implication is that they will get new characters that are those characters, but with a new costume that are released concurrently with the tour.
Like Chef Outfit Shy Guy is going to be the Paris tour costume character.
Well, we know what the Tokyo Tour character is because the sort of promo image for it is Mario in a, old-timey samurai kind of suit outfit.
That's fair.
Yeah, kind of a boring choice, if I'm honest.
But we don't know who the nostalgia character is going to be. We just know
That's
what
true.
the costume is going to be. So that's kind of an exciting thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's got she's not always in the taxi automatically, but it is her signature vehicle that was in the promotion for the gacha pulls with her, along with her signature glider, which I can't remember the name of offhand. But it's infuriatingly rare and is the thing I don't have yet.
I didn't really care about that. It's got nothing to do with her anyway.
Pauline's special move, because everybody has Double Dash style special moves in this one, is called Lucky Sevens, and she's surrounded by 7 different power-ups at once that all go off at the same time when you press the go button. So So
Was hers the gold glider? That's just the gold variant of the normal one.
yeah, probably.
That's lame. Oh wait, no, there's a taxi like rocket glider thing.
Yeah, it's
It might have been that.
Yeah,
The
but
fair flyer.
yeah, it's
Anyway.
like a green shell and a red shell and a the horn,
Blooper?
whatever that's called, and a blooper and some other
And
stuff.
a mushroom and
Oh yeah, there's a mushroom there.
I,
Is
I
it
think
a
there
fire
might be a
flower?
coin. They all go off at the same time.
Yeah, they all go off at the same time.
Yeah.
I was actually able to get the like hit X people with horns successfully challenge ticked off after I got Pauline out of the pipe because getting her lucky sevens, so that was useful.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really nice having her in there and playing as her. She's a top tier level character, so
Yeah,
she's
is.
got a
You
very
need
high score.
Special tickets to level her stats.
Oh yeah, that's true. I haven't done that yet. And it's cool seeing she's got a set of animations for when she's doing tricks and when she wins a race
She
and stuff.
Also has new voice clips.
Oh, yeah.
For Mario Tennis Aces, they reused Odyssey sound bites for her,
Mhm.
but they recorded new voice clips for Mario Kart Tour, and we don't actually know who did them
Oh, okay.
because they sound a little different than Mario Odyssey.
So yeah, a lot of
So-
effort's been put in, and she was the spotlight character of the very first instance of the tour. So
yeah,
it's really Nintendo acknowledging
she was
what a
she was
breakout
the
character
hype
she is.
bomb they dropped in the week leading up to release.
Mm.
Basically, they're like, "Oh, if you're not excited yet, motherfucking Pauline." uh, yeah, it'd be
Yes.
cool if and when Birdo gets in, and I'm interested to see what other sort of characters they pull out. Like it
Yeah.
would of course be great if all of this stuff was making it into like a console Mario Kart.
I know, right?
Because as we were sort of chatting about prior to episode recording, like I've run out of stuff to do in the game.
Yes.
Like
Because of the timed content rollout tour thing, if you play too much, you have to
Yeah,
kind
you-
of stop playing.
kinda
You
get
can't
punished
play at
for
your own
playing too
pace.
much.
You play the
I've-
game's
I've-
pace.
I've run out of daily bonuses. I've done all of the tracks that I can, and the stuff I can't do is gated behind characters I haven't unlocked because it costs premium currency to unlock new characters.
Yeah, and let's not even talk about the paid gold
Yeah.
pass subscription.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't actually think that's too big of a deal in and of itself. Like, everything we've talked about is free. They trickle out premium currency in the game. They do give you some characters just for progressing. I think it was Yoshi this time was one of the characters on the progression track. Characters show up in the coin shop and you get coins for doing races. And like even if you've run out of all the other content to do, you can just race as much as you want and keep collecting coins. Because
Yeah.
unlike in the closed beta I was a part of back in like June and July, there was a stamina system, so you could only like race 5 times in a row before you needed
Oh.
your stamina to refill. And stamina refilled fairly quickly, mind you, but like it was still stamina system. It was possible to race too much and the game to tell you to slow down a bit.
Yeah, I'm glad they don't have that in the final game, but they do have they do limit your progression. You can only get a certain number of coins and
Yeah.
experience points per day, but you can still then race after that if you want to.
No, you can get as many coins as you want.
No,
like-
it's 300. It stops you.
Really?
Yeah, it stops you when you get to 300.
Wow, okay.
And the same with
Um,
experience, I'm pretty sure.
That tells you how much I was paying attention.
Yeah, it's easy to just skip through those screens at the end of a race to get to the next one.
Yeah.
Um,
But okay, never mind. Like, so okay, they cap your coins per day, but you still can get coins, and like I've seen characters for like 800 coins in the shop.
Yeah.
So like it's totally possible to get all these people, and you're just not able to complete the bonus challenges and stuff because like, whoops, you need drive
Yeah,
or
but
something.
the more that they're gonna add PvP features into the game, there's already a ranked cup thing that lasts for a week. But when they bring out multiplayer stuff, and there might be other things in the future, the more that kind of stuff is in the game, the more it'll be a pay-to-win situation.
Yeah,
where...
I'm already encountering that because like I got some lucky pulls the first week and was like easily the top of the ranked thing for whatever group they put me in by like several thousand points, and I got 20 red gems for being number one. Right?
Yes, I did
like,
as well, actually.
I haven't really gotten any upgrades to stuff. I haven't gotten any better carts or gliders or characters since then, and I'm like, I've sort of done the best I can in the ranked cup that is randomly assigned this week, and I'm like, the last time I logged in to check, I was like number 17 on the leaderboards, because there's people with better stuff than me who are just at like 10,000 more points. So,
but as far as the game itself, it's fun to play. I don't want to turn this into a review of Mario Kart Tour, but I think one of my big problems with 8 was the roster was like I didn't like it. And
it wasn't exactly bare bones, but it was fleshed out with an awful lot of variations of characters.
Yeah, there was a lot of crap filler is the problem. And
okay, that's
while Mario Kart Tour is so Tour is undoing some of the mistakes that 8 made by it's already got Diddy Kong in it, for example. But it also has 3 versions of Mario already at launch. So it's gonna probably have a lot of filler as we go on as well.
3?
Yeah. I had a challenge to do a thing with a character with a mustache, but they don't have Wario or Luigi or anyone else in yet, so my options were 3 different Marios to complete that challenge.
Mario, Musician Mario, Metal
Mario,
Baby Mario?
Baby Mario doesn't have a mustache, so yeah, you're right, there's actually 4. I was just thinking of the mustache challenge, but there are 4 Marios in the game.
Mario in the Coin Rush mode.
Yeah, exclusive to Coin Rush mode, yeah. So yeah, 5 Marios.
5 Marios, yeah. And then when they add Luigi, there'll be Green Mario.
Yikes.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. So Mario Kart Tour didn't end up having New Donk City. And do you want to cover Super Mario Party, which also didn't have New Donk City?
Oh, that's fair. So a hacker was data mining games, and there was a big kerfuffle in the news about like, hey, a hacker uncovered unused stuff for a season pass of DLC boards for Super Mario Party, and here's the first one. It's a skyscraper set in a metropolitan area, and everyone was losing their minds, and then Game Explain was level-headed enough to actually follow this up.
Yeah, and debunk the whole thing.
Ask about it, and well, sort of debunk it. It turns out the season pass thing was from the hacker mixing up which ROM he was looking at.
Yeah.
So he was just looking at the season pass data in Mario plus Rabbids, which was totally a thing that came out and we got. Yeah. The skyscraper board for Super Mario Party was a thing, but it was just the test map they used during development to test out features in the game. It was never intended to be player facing, which is why it's really bare bones.
Well, that's still odd to me because it has a theme to it. It's on top of a building, and there's you can see a city all around it. Usually test maps are really, really plain, you know. So it's a little strange.
That's totally fair. I am a little bummed that the obvious metropolitan skyscraper map for Super Mario Party was just an internal thing that we never got as a player-facing feature, because Lord knows that game needs more maps. And it would have been cool to kind of get one that tied in thematically with Mario Odyssey, because everyone was just kind of expecting that to happen because the game came out after Mario Odyssey. And I totally get that a lot of these games were in development concurrently.
So development pipeline,
So you can't necessarily expect them to have tie-in content at launch, but you look at Mario Tennis Aces, they got Pauline in there. She was one of the last DLC characters they put in. But she's still there. You know? So
that was kind of non-news.
Yeah. We thought we had news and then we didn't. But we do have some news.
Yes.
Following up something we've talked about a couple times, the SMB Movie Archive recently got a hold, I say recently, but I guess it was a while ago now, got a hold of a VHS of a bunch of, was it just like assembly footage, or was it specifically deleted scenes?
I heard them call it the assembly cut.
Well, the assembly cut is what we're getting, but I don't know if this was just
I see.
VHS full of deleted scenes that they went back and assembled into.
Right, I'm not sure about that. Yeah,
they got their hands on a bunch of deleted scenes.
Yes,
and they showed a bunch. They showed a couple of them on Twitter, as sort of doing some mini documentary work, going like, here's the original scene, here's the deleted content, here's how it would have been spliced in, here's what it does for the scene composition and what information it gives us, and yada yada yada, like a real anthropological approach to the whole thing, which I appreciated. They sort of tailed off on doing that.
I'm waiting for, hoping they do more.
This past week they announced that the Super Mario Bros. The movie extended cut is a thing, and it will be shown at PAX Australia this weekend. Yeah.
Now I'm not sure if it's the same cut that will eventually be on the Blu-ray, or the assembly cut that they've talked about.
Mythical Blu-ray.
Yeah, whether this thing that they're showing is the final version of it. But the fact is, there's going to be a screening of the movie with additional footage that maybe nobody's ever seen before.
I'm so goddamn jealous.
Yeah, if I had more time to prepare, I could have thought about going, but it's in a different city to me. It's a few hours away, so and I didn't have tickets, and it was sold out, and
unfortunate. Just go mug a scalper or something.
Sorry?
Go mug a scalper. But yeah, that's a thing that's happening. I'm super jealous. I hope it's put up somewhere I can see it at some point in the near future.
You're hoping for a cam recording?
I mean, that'd be better than nothing, but I hope they bring it to other conventions or put it up.
Well, I hope it doesn't stay as a convention exclusive thing.
Historically, Disney has been pretty... lax isn't even the right word. Apathetic. They've been pretty apathetic about the Super Mario Bros. Movie and letting the Super Mario Brothers movie archive just kind of do whatever, which I suspect is why this screening is even happening, because Disney just doesn't care.
Yeah. Footnote, if you didn't know, Disney, through subsidiary companies, owns the distribution rights for the movie.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't be at all surprised if this went up for streaming somewhere. Nintendo might have something to say about it, but I'm not sure legally they have any say in it whatsoever. So, yeah.
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
And those lucky Aussies at PAX Australia Melbourne.
Yeah.
We'll have a fun time.
Yeah.
So that's the news.
That is the news. So SkySkipper. Basic introduction to SkySkipper.
Yeah, SkySkipper is a 1981 arcade game by Nintendo.
Yes.
But it was never properly released.
Well, that's not defined properly.
Yeah, not widely released. So what they did is they had location tests, and it performed poorly in the location tests. So they decided not to go ahead with a full wide distribution of it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And
so it is a finished game.
Were only in Japan.
Yes.
There was some American supply of the game. Never got distributed anywhere that we're aware of. That anybody's aware of.
They sent out PCBs, which are the motherboard for an arcade machine, to Nintendo of America.
Some machines were actually made. They were photographed for various arcade sales flyers.
Yes, and they actually still have one of those cabinets surviving in Nintendo of America's archives.
It's down the street. I could just go break it.
Would they let you in?
No.
No.
Well,
But-
it depends on if that one receptionist is still there.
Mm.
I don't know. Oh, no, they're in a new building. I don't know where anything is anymore. Never mind.
Nuts. So yeah, it's a game by Nintendo R&D 1, which is, that name doesn't really mean much at the very dawn of the company in its video game creation. But it was designed by Genyo Takeda, who is still a higher up at Nintendo, and Shigeru Miyamoto, who likewise. Miyamoto also designed the artwork. He designed the characters, and he did the cabinet and flyer artwork for it.
Yeah, it's very much got that arcade Miyamoto look to it.
And much like Donkey Kong itself, it was programmed. The programming for the game was contracted out to Ikegami Tsushinki.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
It's true.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, some basic stuff. It's really odd for an arcade game of the era, actually. You're in a plane, and by your, I mean Mr. U, which I'm convinced is a very literal translation of Anata-san.
Yeah, that made sense to me when you pointed that out.
Yeah, because, it says, oh, the SkySkipper is Mr. U, but, if you translated that literally back into Japanese, it'd be Anata-san, which, that's sort of the way kids address animals, like Mr. Fox would be, Kitsu-san sort of thing, like that,
It's a polite way of basically the game speaking to you and saying, you're controlling this character.
And the rest of the literature, such as it is on the, attract screens and the cabinet, all talks about the SkySkipper as a character rather than Mr. U. So you have the SkySkipper flying around in a plane, which does have a fuel meter, and you can refuel once.
Oh, you can only do it once. Okay.
Yes. Once per screen.
Yeah.
And the screens are big. They scroll in 4 directions. You can scroll up, down, left, and right.
It's pretty impressive when at the time there was a lot of single screen stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this game. It's very impressive on a technical level. And you are in, Wonderland Kingdom, rescuing the royal family and their subjects in the form of card suite people from an evil tribe of American baseball wearing gorillas.
Yeah, it's really odd. The gorillas in the game are wearing headphones and shoes, sneakers.
So I'm a little unclear on whether they're headphones or sort of helmetless ear protection.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense, actually. The same type you would wear in baseball.
But I'm convinced it might be sort of a mashup of concepts, because they're doing the air artillery thing with the exploding baseballs, so it kind of looks like sort of the radio operator headphones as well, that sort of artillery spotters would wear. So I'm wondering if it's sort of mashing up, let's do baseball and military and mash these up to get the sort of anti-air thing going on. I don't know. Yeah. It's weird. It's a crazy concept, and I love it.
Yeah, a little bit open to interpretation, but they definitely do have a baseball bat that they hit a ball at you with, and that's their method of attacking you. So they know that you're there to rescue the royal family and their attendants, and they're trying to stop you. Now, what I like about that mechanic, actually, with the damage mechanic, is you aren't killed outright in one hit, like you are in a lot of old arcade games. If you get hit by an explosion from a baseball, it just drops you downwards. So you're still in danger of smacking into the terrain and thus crashing, but you can recover from a hit like that. So it's a little bit more forgiving.
And you can drop off bombs, but you are trying to rescue card people and the royal family, who are also sort of card people, but they only come out when gorillas have been stunned.
Yes. So
So
the bombs that you drop are sleep bombs, and the gorillas do recover from them after a time. But
Yeah.
while they're knocked out, any imprisoned people around them in their vicinity will start jumping out of their cell, and you are supposed to swoop in while they're jumping in midair and pick them up and keep going. It's quite dynamic and cool.
but as an added thing on top of all this, because all of the Wonderland residents are sort of card people, as you do, you have a living poker hand in the upper left that is assembled by the card people you're picking up, that you get points based on like whether you can assemble a good poker hand or not.
So that's a mechanic to add to your score. You can clear the level just by rescuing the people in whatever order you want, but in classic arcade style, to get a better score, you need to be careful about the order you do things and try and get good combos and stuff. So the characters that exist are the king, the queen, the joker, and then how many of each animal are there?
That's a good question.
Yeah, there's a number of other animals sorted into 4 species that correspond to suits in a card deck, and by picking up say one of each, that's a really good score bonus. 1 spade, 1 club, 1 heart, 1 diamond.
And I've got some of the cab art pulled up here, and you've got frogs, chickens, rabbits, and whatever the heck the spades are.
Yeah, it seems like they're not really intended to be anything. They look like nothing but a card with arms and legs and a bowler hat with eyes sticking out.
Yeah.
So they kind of just dropped the ball on designing a character for the spade concept. But the other ones are fun little animal creatures, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then is it 4 different maps that,
yes,
again, each have sort of a lot going on?
Yeah, they're quite detailed, or well, the actual art for the level is quite chunky in terms of how it's constructed out of large pixels. But what I like about it is, much like say Donkey Kong Jr. or to a even more extent Donkey Kong 3 Daigyakushu, they kind of tell a story as you progress through the levels just by their layout and what's in them.
Yeah.
Because in the first level, you can see on the far left side of the screen there's a castle, and the king and queen are in there to start with, or at least one of them is. And on the right side of that same screen, there's sort of another kind of fortress. I don't know. It kind of looks like a giant boombox. So some of the level structures are a bit abstract and open to interpretation.
It's Karate Kong's Fortress from Storm Hill.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know what I'm reaching for here.
It does have a recognizable skull as a symbol on the top, which does recur later, which sort of implies it's sort of the evil hideout of the gorillas or something like that.
There you go. Everyone has an evil hideout, even Mario. It's just a thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mario and DK are both evil at different times. Well, we'll talk about whether this
Mario's
gorilla
got
is
a
DK.
castle. That was like the entire plot of Mario Land 2.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, level 1 has these sort of 2 fortresses at each end and a kind of field in between. Should we go through the levels like that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so
you've played it more recently than I have.
I also have maps pulled up right here. So the SkySkipper Restoration Project has a post about it, which then links to an external site. So if you just Google it, you can find it, but it's also at slither-gdi.net/ssmaps.
Okay.
And yeah, so level 2 was maybe the most recognizable location from Earth, because it seems like, my take on it is that it's Paris, because the structure that you start just next to is kind of like the Eiffel Tower, basically. And then there's some flowers next to that and a bridge and some trees.
I thought for a little bit it might be like the Tokyo Sky Tree, but that's a different sort of structure. Like it's a tall, pointy thing, but this one is obviously evocative of the Tokyo Tower.
Yeah,
Or not Tokyo Tower of the Eiffel Tower.
Well, Tokyo Tower is kind of shaped like the Eiffel Tower if you look at it, but it does have a recognizable red and white color scheme. Actually, Mario Kart Tour prominently displays the Tokyo Tower as a symbol of Tokyo to bring it back. But
no wonder they're doing the Paris tour. They can just reuse the model.
The other reason that I think it's France is because underneath a lot of the level, the ground is striped with red, with blue, white, red, which is the exact shape and color of the flag of France. So at this point, I'm sort of building up an idea of maybe what the story of the game is. If you're starting in this place that has a king and queen and then moving to France, maybe the king and queen are the royal family of the Netherlands, and they move to the neighboring France as part of this chase.
Kingdom.
That's
looking
true.
At the maps now, and I always mistook the right-hand side fortress as like a spaceship.
Okay. That would be quite a twist.
I can definitely see what. Well, it's probably because I had the Jungle Beat stuff on the brains, and there is a decent amount of like stuff from space, quote unquote, going on in that game.
Yeah.
So sort of, Evil Kongs from space is not a foreign concept to the series at this point in time.
Absolutely.
So,
Jet Race had the giant robotic Kongs from space, which was cool too.
That's true. But yeah, so France.
Yes. Level 2 is France, more or
basically.
less. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then level 3.
Going on the right side of the screen, France.
Oh, I couldn't make out. It's kind of abstract. Maybe like the thing on the far right is a croquet mallet or something, or actually it's more like a hockey stick. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Pipe.
I don't know. It's all flag colored.
Yeah, some of the level
weird,
geometry
though.
is
that's
just
like,
yeah.
That's a giant bottle, right? That's not just me.
That's what I took as well. Sort of reminiscent of there's a story in Journey to the West that gets brought back in Dragon Ball Filler, where there's a magic bottle that can suck people into it, and you're sort of miniaturized in there, and the inside the bottle is this huge space. But the bottle is clearly open. You can fly into it, and in front of the spout are these. I don't know what they are. I don't know if it's supposed to represent something spurting out, possibly. It's hard to tell. But why there is a giant bottle in this level, I have no idea. And to the left is just sort of an unconnected series of squares and rectangles.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to be, honestly.
Yeah, if I'm honest, this one seems the most sort of half-finished in terms of, like, theming.
Yeah, I can.
It's tempting to think of the game as being unfinished because it was never properly released, but by the time it got to location tests, it would have been completed to, the extent that it would have been, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a giant bottle. I don't know. What do you think is going on in level 4 though?
At first glance, I want to say like a zoo.
Oh yeah. I was thinking maybe an underground lair with tunnels and caves.
I mean, that works too, because you've sort of got, again, the skull little area going on.
Yeah, there is a skull motif that comes back in level 4, yeah.
Yeah.
But you actually do see the blue, white, red striped pattern again in the ground. Not sure what it means in this case.
Weird.
Oh, maybe it's the catacombs underneath Paris.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. There seems to be a running theme in early side game entries to the Donkey Kong family of stuff, where it's just sort of like, yeah, stuff's happening.
Don't worry too much about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Junior probably has the strongest like theming to the levels.
That
makes some kind of sense.
Scenes of like Mario taking off in a helicopter.
Yeah, and you start in the jungle, and then you go towards Mario's
This
mechanized
one's so weird.
hideout.
It's got like there's castles and you visit France and there's evil Kongs who are wearing baseball gear, but it's made by a completely Japanese team, and it's like, what is going on?
Well, Japan loves baseball, don't forget that.
This is true. Japan does love baseball, but they've like the baseball playing gorillas are the bad guys in this game.
Do you think the gorillas are also wearing baseball mitts? I'm trying to look at that now.
It does sort of look like they're wearing baseball mitts, yes.
Maybe that's just their big hands.
Oh no, that's them holding the bat. Yeah, it's totally just their big hands.
Yeah.
And then they've got. I like to think that they're normal sized bats. They're just really small in the gorilla's hands.
Yeah, it seems that way. So, what is your take on the gorillas? Should we discuss that now?
So, so the level transitions between levels is SkySkipper sort of giving a like V for victory on top of a cage that one of the gorillas is in, cursing at you, literally. This isn't like Hubert cursing. This is isn't it like a damn it, I'll escape, is what he says.
Yeah, they use the word damn, yeah.
Yeah. And SkySkipper's like surrounded by some of the people he's rescued and stuff, and everyone's, victorious on top of this cage that the gorillas are in. And there's a couple different jingles that play during these attract sequences. And
That's
one
right.
of them is like an arrangement of the Donkey Kong theme, sort of evoking Donkey Kong. And we should mention that the only definitive date we have for this game is an arcade flyer advertising the game in September of 1981, just a few months after Donkey Kong dropped and became a phenomenon. So it seems kind of like they're trying to bank off of the success of Donkey Kong.
Yeah, and the screen during the attract mode that tells you who the characters are, the dramatis personae. It tells you, this is Mr. U, and then et cetera, et cetera. And then for the gorilla, it says guest starring.
Yeah. So it's making a big deal out of the gorilla, and I'm convinced that this is supposed to be like Donkey Kong or the Kongs, or the first instance of the Kongs as a unit, basically.
An extended clan or family, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's calling back to the fact that the Kong identity is an established thing, and now it's appearing in this game as well.
Yeah.
Although it never comes right out and says it.
Yeah.
You do see in the levels, the sprite that they use for the gorilla is recolored, so there's 3 variations of the gorilla that you see. So I guess in the sense that arcade games can be an abstraction of what is supposed to be happening, maybe there's a gang of 3 Kongs who are behind this, or maybe there's a huge number of them, and the most you see at once is like there's 10 in a level at some point, maybe.
Yeah.
Or 9 in level 3, it looks like. Yeah, they sort of wander back and forth, but they have their little areas that they stay in. There is a mechanic in the game where if you finish the 4 levels, it cycles back to the start, but it changes it up slightly and perhaps gets more difficult. So some of the locations of the characters that you rescue will change on the second round through. And I think they add additional hazards. They certainly do in the port. Yeah.
So it's just a interesting little thing that's going on here. This little story of the Kongs invading Wonderland Kingdom. It's an interesting game. There's a lot going on. It's technically impressive. I can see why it did not do well in the location tests. It is not as easily grokkable as, say, Donkey Kong to sort of pick up and drop into.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complex. And the movement too, since you're flying around freely in this level, it's all too easy to crash if you're not used to the controls, especially in the later levels as they get more complex.
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, it didn't do well, so it was never properly released. So should we get into that?
Yeah, let's get into that a bit. We already touched on that, like, it had location tests, it didn't do well. They made the decision to convert the existing PCBs into Popeye machines.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the same way that an underperforming previous game, Radar Scope, got converted into Donkey Kong PCBs by rewriting the software on them. All the PCBs that they sent out for SkySkipper got rewritten to have Popeye, the game, on them. And that's another, tangential DK connection, because the original Donkey Kong was designed to be a Popeye licensed game until they couldn't secure the license, and they made it a DK game instead and swapped out the characters.
But
they did eventually secure it and made a separate game for Popeye.
Yeah, which is very good. And I could easily see being converted into another Donkey Kong title had the licensing not worked out for that one as well. So, and they did end up using some mechanics from SkySkipper in Popeye.
That's what I read in an article, but I wasn't sure what it was referring to. What's your take on that?
From what I recall, it's been a little while since I played Popeye, but some of this sort of popping up out of the ground stuff that the card people do is used in Popeye, but also Bluto displays some sort of behavioral properties of the gorillas.
Okay.
With sort of like the swinging up arms and the projectile attacking, if I'm remembering correctly. So, but also Popeye, I guess aesthetically similarly, has very different levels from one another.
Yeah.
That have some different mechanics in them and stuff as well. So, yeah. I don't know. It's as a quick side tangent. It's interesting to think, had the Popeye game that eventually happened ended up being a Donkey Kong game as well. It has more than 3 characters in it.
Oh yeah, there's that old crone that throws bottles at you.
Well, there's also like the baby and
Sweet Pea,
the hamburger guy. I know I never remember his name when I'm trying to talk about this. He's a beast. Have you read some of those old Popeye comics? He ate a bear. He ate a bear. But there's also, there's the Sea Witch, because everyone forgets that Popeye is in fact a sailor. So it's sort of interesting to think of like, who would these characters have been? Would we have gotten some new Donkey Kong characters?
I dare say we would.
Yeah. I remember trying to answer this very question during one of my early attempts at ROM hacking, and sort of since the NES version didn't have had only had the Sea Witch as an additional character and not the other two.
Okay.
I made up a new character of Pauline's grandmother who does not like Mario.
Nice.
Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah, there's another Popeye connection just quickly, because part of the educational series on the NES later on, which resulted in DK Junior Math and would have involved Donkey Kong Ongaku Asobi, which is Donkey Kong Fun with music. They also had Popeye Ego Asobi, play with English. So to teach Japanese kids a bit of English, they had a sort of conversion of the Popeye thing with some edutainment mechanics thrown in.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
DK adjacent. Yeah. Anyway.
But so it gets converted into Popeye machines and is never heard from again, and people only know it exists because, again, there's some arcade cabinet sales flyers that specifically have photographs of this game on it.
At some point, the PCB got dumped and the ROM was online and able to be played in MAME, but I'm not sure when that happened.
Yeah.
Maybe
I guess it's not entirely true that nobody ever heard of it again, because for some reason it got a home console port.
Yeah, that's really weird. We'll cover that after this, but it had a presence on the market at the time, but converted from a machine that was never properly released.
Yeah,
it's a
not even
very
at the
strange
time.
thing.
Like a few years later.
Yeah, a few years later.
Given how quick game turnaround was, like we will talk about the timeline of games like being commissioned and actually coming out later in this episode, and it was snappy. So the fact that like there was a home console port like 2 years later for an arcade game that never actually launched is mind-boggling. But yeah. Well,
maybe part of the reason for that, I don't know. We're talking about the port a lot right now. Should we say it?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, go for it.
So the port is on the Atari 2600, and it's Parker Brothers who published it. And the story that I read about it is that Parker Brothers was negotiating for the Popeye license and then threw SkySkipper on in addition to that.
Okay.
Yeah. But even then, if it was like a later negotiation, that wouldn't even make sense, because why would they even want the SkySkipper license if it hadn't been released?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it was part of the... because the Popeye boards were on SkySkipper boards, and it just, I don't know, turned into a thing. It would depend on who Parker Brothers was licensing through, I guess. Because if it came in a batch... Yeah,
I assume they went through Nintendo, who would own the rights to the game, the Popeye game.
Yeah.
And they converted that, and then they threw in SkySkipper as part of that negotiation.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well, either way, they did do a version, and it was released. The cover artwork is sort of a trace of the SkySkipper in the plane, but the gorilla looks completely different.
Yeah, it does.
It's in a softer, more shaded art style. But as for the game itself, it's a pretty typical Atari 2600 port of an arcade game, in that it has much simpler graphics. The level layouts are more basic. They cut out a few mechanics to make it just an all-round simpler game.
Yeah.
But it's got three levels. They don't really tell a story in the same way that the arcade game did, because they're just one color and they're very blocky. But I sort of headcanoned them in as part of exploring the underground lair of the Kongs and finding more imprisoned animals down there. Instead of all the range of characters that you have in the arcade game, you still have 4 classes of characters and not the royalty level. But they're actually different animals in this version. There's a set of cats, tortoises or turtles, ducks, and rabbits. So rabbits do crossover. There is a rabbit in common, but it's fun that you have a different set of animals. And especially with the cats, you can tell that they're animalistic cats. They're not anthropomorphic.
Yeah. In the arcade game, they're sort of upright, sort of animal people. Yeah,
because the story is that they're part of the royal court of the
cats and ducks and whatnot. So, but yeah, so that's sort of like, that was the last release of this game until fast forward to the Nintendo Switch.
And I like, just my last point on the port is that I like that even though it's cut down from the arcade game and they remove a lot of mechanics, it does bring something new to the table, because it has different kinds of animals and stuff. And it also retains the mechanic of increasing difficulty on completion of a level set. So once you loop back to level 1, they add in clouds, which actually, now that I think of it, if you're underground, the level is completely enclosed in the in-game graphics, but there's also clouds in there. Yeah.
You can have weather in caves.
If they're big enough, yeah, you can. Even in buildings, yeah. So I guess it's a really cavernous underground layer that's just a gigantic. But yeah, so that's cool. Oh, it might even be like the, what is it, Journey to the Center of the Earth sort of Hollow Earth thing going on.
Oh my god, that's where the Kongs come from. I don't know.
Yeah, let's do it.
But then the space stuff. Okay, whatever. There's so much going on in these games. Yeah, so as part of the Arcade Archives project that has been ongoing for the past console generation or so or two, SkySkipper actually got a formal release date in
thanks to Hamster, who is the one who does all these releases, and they always do a great job making them play well and be, you know, more or less arcade perfect, as well as including a lot of options and dip switch controls and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was last year in 2018, but like I'm almost positive that you can attribute this even happening to the efforts of the restoration project, restoration rediscovery project, to just thanking them for like getting SkySkipper back into the cycle of people things are talking about and making Nintendo remember that they had this thing lying around.
Absolutely. They did some really good work with that project,
Yeah, and the story in that was that it was 2016. Someone, was it Poland or Sweden? Somebody in Europe had a Popeye board that they determined was one of the converted SkySkipper boards, and they did some amateur work trying to unconvert it, whatever the word is for that. Swedish. It was a Swedish collector who had gotten hold of one of these boards, and they did not succeed too well. But this sort of sparked some interest from the arcade collectors community, and one guy in particular, a Alex Crowley, was that the person? Yeah, he just on one of his regular jaunts collecting old arcade PCBs and stuff, he happened to find another of these converted Popeye boards, and he made an arrangement with the owner of the Swedish guy to buy that board off of him. So he had two of these, and he took them to a specialist mechanical engineering guy who did custom electric guitars for rock stars, and worked with him to sort of piecemeal a working SkySkipper board out of the parts of each of these converted Popeye boards. And there is a little bit of fudging because they had the SkySkipper ROM that we mentioned earlier to reference, and again, nobody knows who dumped that. Nobody knows where that came from. But eventually they had to do some jury rigging because like Popeye only uses one button and SkySkipper uses two, so they had to go like borrow some parts from a Versus System cabinet.
That's right.
Some other rigging.
We didn't mention before, but one of the buttons is a speed up button that makes you fly faster, and the other one is the bomb drop.
But yeah, so after some jury rigging and fudging of numbers a little bit, they had what, to their knowledge, was the only working SkySkipper board on the planet. And they and Mr. Crowley, Alex Crowley, was like, fudge it, let's go the whole hog, let's recreate an actual arcade cabinet. So we had this old black and white flyer of what the arcade cabinet looked like, and so he commissioned some artists, and they sort of had to guess based on this isometric picture of art on an arcade cabinet in black and white. And then someone discovered in an old Japanese arcade magazine a color version of this flyer. So they were actually able to see what the colors on this board looked like. And eventually all of this led to some interviews with Nintendo of America and the revelation that they actually had like one of these arcade cabinets sitting in storage somewhere. And some other stuff. But all of this led to a very, very thorough restoration project, which meant that like Nintendo was aware that they had this, there was some demand for it, and eventually we got a formal release from the Arcade Archives project.
And the project did actually have a little bit of... so they were invited to visit NOA's headquarters and see the machine in person. And from that, they observed close up the artwork and then could refer back to that as a reference for their
and the other sides
artwork.
of the board, because you only get two sides of the machine on these flyers.
True.
So they were able to look at the art on the other side of the cabinet as well. Which there are some pictures of that on the internet, but there's far fewer of them. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
And the end result of the project is that they do have a restored or recreated cabinet with their PCB in it and with their commissioned artwork on it, and they have taken that to a few events in the US and the UK.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, good stuff. Like I said, it would make a good documentary movie.
Yeah. But we're lucky enough to be at the point now where anyone can officially play SkySkipper through the Switch.
Yeah. Good stuff. The Switch has been really good for that. Nintendo finally sorted out their licensing issues with Ikigami that we mentioned earlier. And so we have, for the first time officially, since the 80s, ports of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. arcade games. We've got SkySkipper. We've got a bunch of other quote-unquote lost games that Nintendo has been putting out again, or I guess for the first time, like Star Fox 2.
On the SNES Mini.
They've just been really good about that lately. And I hope it continues. Like, who knows, maybe we'll get some of those, like, more or less finished but never released rare games in the near future.
Oh, fingers crossed.
I know, right? Which I guess brings us to the lasting legacy of SkySkipper.
And, it's surprising that it has the legacy it does, given that it was never properly released again.
Yeah, there's not much, but what is there is surprising.
Yeah, so first of all, there's the Atari 2600 port that we covered already a few years later. But there's another actually appearance of the characters in a game that you can see in the Game Boy camera software, which is a completely bonkers little piece of kit. It's not just a really low-res digital camera that you put in your Game Boy. If you boot up the software, and you can do this with a ROM without even having the hardware, you can play around with all the little options they have. There's so many little toys and
very reminiscent of Mario Paint or WarioWare.
Absolutely, yes, it's in that lineage for sure. It even has a mini game in it that's a sequel to, what is it again? Is it Space Fever or something?
Something like that. Space Fever 2 is one of the games that is hidden.
As a sequel to an old Nintendo shooter. There's a couple of Donkey Kong related things in there as well. For the remit of our site there.
It's insane.
In terms of the SkySkipper content, if you navigate to the link menu, which I think you start on the main menu screen after the title screen, you press select and that sort of flips the options around, and then you can there's so many little options like sending to Game Boy printer and stuff, but the link one, which is intended to connect to Game Boys together with link cable, has SkySkipper artwork, it's got the Queen, the King, and the Frog, as seen in the flyer artwork drawn by Miyamoto. Just sort of arranged on this screen with the options for the menu around them. It's and every screen in the game is like this. Nothing is plain. Everything has some silly character to it. But yeah, that's a reappearance of these characters that really nobody would have known anything about at the time.
Yeah.
Also, an odd detail of it is that the king, he's in the pose that he's sort of jumping, but they've rotated it so he appears to be flying. So I don't know what that implies, but
yeah, it's surreal, is what it is. But yeah, so that's a odd but kind of awesome little bit of legacy there.
Yeah, Game Boy camera is a treasure.
Yeah, it certainly is.
But that's the only other time you would see them in a game.
Yeah.
I tried to sort of reach and think about what other ways SkySkipper might have impacted later games, and I thought back to how you do see both Mario and Wario flying biplanes in later games, but both of those are resulting from the Game Boy team of Gunpei Yokoi, and he wasn't involved with SkySkipper, so it's like a different lineage there. And planes are, a common enough motif that I don't know if there's a real connection.
The only other thing I can sort of think of that's likely accidental are the jokes about the Crimean War in Donkey Kong Country 3 that Cranky's grandfather participated in.
Did Bazooka Bear participate in that, or was he also?
I believe it was Bazooka Bear, but he also mentions Cranky's grandfather because that's the owner of the trading MacGuffin you get from him.
It was his mirror, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know.
So how old is Bazooka Bear then? Jeez. Anyway.
Don't ask questions. Yeah. Ooh, France was involved in the Crimean War. Maybe?
The Crimean War?
Yeah. How do you pronounce that?
Or are you talking about the DKC3 Crimean War or the real event that it's a parody of?
I'm talking about both of them at this point. I don't know. Like I said, that's reaching.
France was involved, yeah.
Yeah. So, a different sort of legacy.
Yeah.
That gets back into lawsuits and things was so SkySkipper. All we really know about the time frame of SkySkipper is that an arcade flyer dated the 30th of September 1981 is the only date we have to associate with this game. So that's sort of the people that say more than 1981, sometime after Donkey Kong, that actually care about such things, like me, who goes around the internet scouring for flyers like this. September 1981. Earlier in September of 1981 was when a licensing agreement happened with Falcon in Europe between them and Nintendo. Falcon had already been doing work for Nintendo, producing Donkey Kong cabinets for Europe, but also supplying sort of overflow demand for the United States. But around this time, demand in Japan outpaced what Nintendo themselves could supply. So they licensed out to Falcon the rights to release a version of Donkey Kong called Crazy Kong in Japan. And I'm getting this information from the findings section of a court document for a lawsuit between Nintendo and Falcon because Falcon violated the rights of this license agreement later in 1982. And according to these court documents, the name Crazy Kong was because of a sort of reverse localization where you got Donkey Kong because Miyamoto sort of whether it's correct or not, it's attributed to Miyamoto misunderstanding a dictionary definition of like crazy or stubborn. And then the findings section of this lawsuit says that the Japanese translation of Donkey Kong would come out to something like Crazy Gorilla or Crazy Kong. Hence Crazy Kong for this licensing for producing overflow demand arcade cabinets for Japan for Nintendo. So Crazy Kong, often thought to be a bootleg of Donkey Kong, is not actually. It's a licensed product. It's an official thing. This is Donkey Kong and Mario and Pauline officially. What was bootlegged was all of the Crazy Kong cabinets that exist outside of Japan, because that was not part of the deal, and is why their license got terminated. But anyway, 2 versions of Crazy Kong happened. The sort of hack job that was made out of converted Crazy Climber cabinets that likely happened immediately within the scope of the month. So the timeline here so far is like licensing agreement is reached early September. Crazy Kong probably starts immediately shipping on cabinets converted as fast as humanly possible, because money, dollar bills, you know. And then the end of September, flyers are sent out advertising SkySkipper in Japan, and this would be like when the location tests are going on, right? But then they make the decision not to do the wide release, and we know from the restoration project that these PCBs for SkySkipper from NOA were sent to Europe. And it's unknown whether they were sent to Europe pre-conversion or post-conversion. But either way, they likely went through Falcon and might have actually gone through Falcon for the conversions.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Either way, Falcon likely saw SkySkipper. By the end of the year, Falcon released Crazy Climber Part 2.
Crazy Kong.
Crazy Kong Part 2. They released Crazy Climber 2 later. Crazy Kong Part 2, which has graphics that are much closer to the original Donkey Kong with some different color palettes, but with some additional features like Kong yelling "Give up" at you on board 3 due to some sound bites similar to Pauline's "Help! Help!" But also a new attract mode sequence of Donkey Kong in a cage, very reminiscent of SkySkipper, which seems coincidental until you realize that, like, oh no, they'd seen SkySkipper. They likely were some of the only people to have seen SkySkipper. So just sort of bringing it full circle, putting the Kong in a cage thing into Donkey Kong proper, which was then praised by Miyamoto when he saw this. It's attributed on Japanese Wikipedia that Miyamoto saw this and was like, by God, they've done it, sort of thing. So yeah, just sort of bringing it full circle with SkySkipper being riding off of Donkey Kong, and then Crazy Kong sort of riding off of SkySkipper.
Yeah.
So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You explained that really well, by the way. There might be another movie in that story.
Yeah, and like, remember that Donkey Kong dropped, according to these court documents, Donkey Kong like went into production in June and dropped in July.
Yeah.
And then like by September, like already, like by the end of July, demand had outstripped their supply, so they'd already started doing dealings with Falcon to provide more arcade cabinets places. And then by September, they needed them to supply more arcade cabinets in different countries because they couldn't keep up globally.
Yeah, that was Donkey Kong fever.
And so over the course of just July to the end of the year, so over the course of 6 months, you got Donkey Kong, Crazy Kong, SkySkipper, and Crazy Kong Part 2. You got like 4 entries in this series over the course of 6 months, just because demand and hype for Donkey Kong, and just sort of this little, yeah, Donkey Kong was huge. early arcade games were insane.
Yeah.
Like, between Donkey Kong and Pac-Man, they legit ran out of quarters in the United States. They had to mint more. Which is just, that boggles my mind.
Yeah, the stuff that Falcon did to add things to their port of Donkey Kong, that's really cool, and it's something I didn't really realize before. But would that make Crazy Kong Part 2 sort of the ultimate version of Donkey Kong that exists for arcade?
Yeah, kind of. Personally, I still don't think the graphics are quite up to what the original Donkey Kong is. But if you were to take the little additions like the new sound bites and the new attract mode and somehow port them into the original, yeah, that would be the definitive edition.
Yeah, and speaking of Pac-Man, books. I think Midway, the US licensor for Pac-Man from Namco, also did similar things, making their own renewed versions of Pac-Man with their own additions. The same way that like Crazy Kong was.
Miss Pac-Man from. And you saw some things in the home ports of the Donkey Kong games too. Famously, the cut level from the one home port of Donkey Kong Jr.
The kitchen level.
Yeah, the kitchen level.
That's cool. I love that stuff. Yeah.
Just it's kind of neat seeing what various porting studios were adding to put their own little stamp on things. But then, of course, Falcon screwed it all up by violating the terms of their licensing agreement and getting into the lawsuit with Nintendo, which is the direct cause of all of those, like, don't pirate things screens Nintendo slapped on everything. The case file they're referencing on those screens is actually this court ruling. Which is ironic because later in 1982, Nintendo in turn was sued by Ikegami for using the original Donkey Kong code to make Donkey Kong Jr. when they didn't own the code.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah, there's 3 big lawsuits around Donkey Kong, aren't there? There's this Falcon one, there's the Ikegami one, and then there's Universal suing them for the use of the Kong name. Which
was sort of, I don't know how Universal didn't. This one's really dumb. I looked this one up right before the podcast too, because there was some discussion of like, why is he called the Gorilla in this instead of Donkey Kong? So we were thinking, oh, maybe it's because of one of the lawsuits. So I looked up the circumstances surrounding the Universal lawsuit with King Kong. And what happened was late 1983.
Yeah, so it's too late.
Another games manufacturer wanted to get in on this and contacted Universal going, hey, can I use the King Kong stuff too? To which Universal said, wait, what?
What do you mean too?
Which resulted in them suing Nintendo. And it's like, guys, they literally ran out of money and had to make more. What rock have you been living under? And then famously, the lawyer, Mr. Kirby, pointed out that Universal didn't actually have the rights to King Kong.
Yep.
Which meant anybody was free to use it. It's just,
yeah,
what a cluster.
They really should have consulted better with their lawyers before entering that suit.
I know, right?
And then that leads to apocryphally Kirby, the Nintendo character or HAL character, being named after that lawyer.
Being named after Mr. Kirby, who then just passed away the other day.
Yeah.
So.
Oof. All right. So to summarize, SkySkipper probably, according to your research, which was really well done and thorough, SkySkipper may have influenced the interstitial scenes in Crazy Kong Part 2 featuring Donkey Kong in a cage, which Miyamoto then saw, and then Donkey Kong Jr. also had DK in a cage in its interstitial cutscenes.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about that connection because that's how
that's
Kong Jr. started.
Continuing the circle and feeding back into the next official sequel.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to make that leap, but it could be.
I mean, I absolutely want to make that leap. That's the sort of website we are.
And speaking of,
I do my J. Jonah Jameson pound.
Yes.
Bring me pictures of Donkey Kong.
Well, gee, I'm good friends with Donkey Kong. I could get you some pictures.
which leads us into our tabloid section of the podcast. So sort of in the spirit of our fan wanking that Stanley the Bugman is Parachute Stanley Ottershaw from the Gory Detail games, and our talking about how Captain Syrup is really Pauline in disguise a few episodes ago, we were sort of hypothesizing that, the SkySkipper, which again is just another name for a captain, because that's the equivalent rank of the Air Force.
Really?
Because skipper is a Navy captain.
Wait, did you make this up?
No, I did not, actually.
SkySkipper is a real thing?
Well, yes and no. A skipper is a legitimate rank.
Okay.
It is the captain of a ship or a boat.
Mm-hmm.
So a SkySkipper is the captain of a plane.
Okay. I'll go along with it.
Yeah. So the captain you're playing as, this captain, this aerial captain who's fighting Kongs. Well, we know of another Stanley who is an Air Force captain, or an aerial captain who fights Kongs. And it again is Captain Stanley Ottershaw.
Yes.
So I'm going to declare right here and now that retroactively SkySkipper is the first appearance of Mr. Ottershaw. But
wait a second. When was Greenhouse?
Greenhouse was 1980. It was before Donkey Kong 3 either way, but it was either 1982 or 1983.
Yeah, you're right.
But also just sort of a wonderful little bit of fan wank. When Milo was streaming SkySkipper the other day, partially just because and partially as research for this episode.
Yes.
Greenhouse was December of 82.
Okay.
But he had some documentation that said the kingdom is the Wonderland Kingdom. Or at least it's the Wonderland Kingdom royalty that you were rescuing in SkySkipper. Wonderland is a really common name. Lewis Carroll comes from that.
Yeah.
It fits with the card people motif.
Yeah, the card suit people,
yeah.
That's a very Wonderland thing. Yeah.
So yeah, no surprises there. This isn't like some super big revelation. But what it is, another place around that time period that the Wonderland Kingdom title was being used was in the original Wonder Boy, which is an arcade game that came out in 1986. So a few years later, inspired by, platformers like Mario and stuff, although predating Super Mario Bros.
It was a scrolling platformer,
Yeah, it was actually the second scrolling platformer. The first one being Pac World, some Pac-Man game based on. Yeah, it's the one based on the Pac-Man cartoon show.
Oh, okay.
But that was a scrolling platformer. So Wonder Boy is actually the second scrolling platformer.
Huh.
But famously, Wonder Boy 2, Wonder Boy in Monsterland, incorporated elements from The Legend of Zelda and became more of a fantasy thing. So you had this kingdom getting cursed by an evil dragon and everybody turned into monsters, hence the Monsterland moniker sticking. But the original name of the kingdom is Wonderland Kingdom. And sort of some research I had been doing for another planned episode of Kongs in other old arcade games that don't necessarily have anything to do with Nintendo. Wonder Boy in Monsterland has a bunch of angry Kong sub-bosses and bosses in it. So you have formerly Wonderland Kingdom with some Kongs in it. And it's like, so when Milo was like, oh, and this is the Wonderland Kingdom that the Kongs have kidnapped this royalty from, my little brain went, oh my god, a connection! So, yeah. I'm not quite so fan wanky that I'm like, we need to cover all the Wonder Boy games now. But
I wouldn't be surprised if you did.
There. I was thinking about it. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, so that's just sort of the other little fan wank section of this podcast.
Yeah, I love it. That's what we do. That's what we're good at.
I was about to say this has been a short podcast for us, but it's been like an hour and a half.
Yeah. So that's SkySkipper.
Man.
Check it out, people.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a little more complex than Donkey Kong or Mario Bros. As we sort of mentioned, there's a lot going on, but the basic gist of it, like, you don't have to pay attention to the card suits or the weird scenery stuff going on, or there's the dichotomy of all the elements going on in the background. All you really need to worry about is fly your plane around, bomb the shit out of the gorillas, rescue the little card suit people, and keep an eye on your fuel meter. So that is a little more complex than, you know, don't get hit by barrels, pick up hammers. But it's fun.
It is.
I like it. I would recommend it. It's a neat little curio of Nintendo history.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it's both in universe and without. It's part of the Donkey Kong arcade era lineage, a very important part that slots in among all these other games.
Yeah. So yeah, go give it a look.
Cool. So to finish the episode, Gibbon, have you got any plugs you want to plug?
Oh lordy. Not off the top of my head. How about you, Milo?
Well, I recently got done translating a manga adaptation of Shrek the DreamWorks movie. Ooh. From, a contemporary manga that was printed in Korokoro magazine. And it's really silly and dumb, and it doesn't just cover the same story as the movie, and it's got all its own, like, gags and things. And it was a fun little project to work on. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, if you're just plugging random stuff, a game that just came out on Switch and Steam a couple days ago is called Crossniq Plus. It's a puzzle game, and it's a sequel to an itch.io puzzle game that I really enjoyed from a couple years back. And it's a little different. It's a grid of colored squares, and you have to sort of rotate them Rubik's Cube style to line up a row and a column of the same color to get them to sort of snap away like Tetris Attack style. And it'll repopulate the board, and you have to go back, and as you sort of go through the game, like Tetris, it gets a little harder as you go, so your timer will start running out faster, and they introduce like different types of blocks that are like can only be shifted in one direction, or can only can't go past the edge of the board because usually they wrap around and stuff like that. But yeah, Crossniq Plus just came out for Switch and Steam. I recommend it on Switch just because I love the system. But
and the touchscreen support lets you swipe game screen.
True.
Yeah.
It's very Puyo Puyo-ish in that it's got Crossniq Plus now has a cast of little sort of cartoony anime characters. I suspect that is on purpose. Our friend and fellow community member Tonya says she knows the creator of the game from those circles. So I suspect it's directly inspired by the sort of cast that Puyo Puyo has. But yeah, it's a fun little thing. It's really cheap. It's like $7 US dollars. So yeah, check it out.
Cool, thanks. Yeah. So thanks very much for listening. We're very pleased to have the support of our readers and listeners. And we'll see you next time on the Arcade Era Power Hour.
Yeah. Toodles.
Bye-bye.